So this week we are going to be reading Parshat Chayei Sara, and I want to share with you a comparison between Rashi and Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the Netziv, as the content for this week's video shiur. And as we compare their commentary on one part of the story in Chayei Sara, I think we'll be able to eke out a really important lesson in terms of what's important in life and maybe what should be the litmus test or the bar for what impresses us. So let's start with some of the verses at the beginning of the parsha. After Sarah dies, Avraham it goes on a mission, or actually sends his Eved, sends his servant on a mission to find a wife for Yitzchak. And this Eved, this servant, is not really sure how to go about doing this mission, how to go about making sure he finds the right woman for Yitzchak. So he basically sets up a test, and he says as follows: O Lord Hashem, Elokei Adoni Avraham, Hakrena lefanai hayom va'asei chesed im Adoni Avraham. The God of my master Abraham, I pray this day, show kindness unto my master Abraham. And he sets up a test. I will stand by the fountain of water, and the daughters of the men of the city came out to draw the water. So let it come to pass that the young woman to whom I shall say, let down thy pitcher, I pray thee, that I may drink. And she shall say, drink, and I will give your camels to drink also. This is all in chapter 24, starting with verse 12. If you want to just take a break for a second, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, to go get a chumash. And while he's in the middle of speaking, before he even finished speaking, and this the Torah records, Vayehi hu terem kila ledaber, he had scarcely finished speaking, when Rivka, who was born to Betuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nachor, came out with her jar on her shoulder. And then the Torah records that she was beautiful, and then the Torah records this: Vayaratz ha'eved likrata. The servant ran toward her. And the commentaries are struck by this verse. Why, they want to know, why did he run towards her? He had set up a test that this person would have to say certain things, and then he would know that she was the right one. But this episode of him running to her happens before she does anything. Verse 17 says, "Vayaretz ha'eved likrata." He runs to her, and then she says, "Vayomer hagmini nami ma'at ma'im mikadech." He says, the servant ran to her and said, "Please let me sip a little from your jar." And then she says, "Shetei Adoni v'timaher v'tored kada al yadav v'tashkehu." Drink, my lord, she said, and she quickly lowered her jar upon her head to drink. When she had let him drink his fill, she said, "I would also draw for your camels." So she passes the test that he had set up, but what strikes the commentaries as out of order is that he ran to her. There was something about her that struck the Eved, the servant, as being so wonderful that he ran to her, almost as if knowing, even before she said anything, that she was the one that he was going to choose for Yitzhak. So Rashi is bothered by this, and we know Rashi is bothered by this because he comments on this phrase, Vayaretz ha'eved likrata, that the servant ran to meet her. And this is what Rashi says: Lefi shera'a she'alu hamayim likrata. Why did the Eved run to Rivka? Because he saw that the water rose to meet her. When she went to get water from the well, instead of having to lower the bucket or draw water from the trough, whatever it was there, the water rose up to her, which was a miracle. And since this miracle had occurred for her, the Eved immediately knew that she was the right one before she even had to do anything. Vayaretz ha'eved likrata. He ran to meet her. That's Rashi's interpretation of what happened. Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the Netziv, has a different interpretation, which is exactly the opposite of, I think, the opposite of what Rashi says. Let's just think for a moment to further about Rashi's comment. What impressed the Eved is nothing that Rivka did, but it's a miracle that took place, presumably, right? Give her credit, presumably because of her righteousness. But there was an obvious miracle, and you could imagine the impression that this miracle had not only on him but on anyone else who was there. They must have been very impressed. This was a public moment, according to Rashi, that whoever was there would have seen, because he was there, and he obviously wasn't that close because it said he had to run to get close to her. Everyone who was there saw this public manifestation of Rivka's righteousness. It was a big moment where Rivka's righteousness was now made known to whoever was there. That's how I understand what Rashi is saying. The Netziv has a very different approach. He says that there are three reasons why the Eved was particularly taken by Rivka and why he ran to her. One is, as the Torah says, that she was beautiful. So we're going to leave that one aside. That's a very interesting point that Netziv is making, and says something interesting also about the relative importance of beauty and attraction. Perhaps he wanted to make sure that Yitzhak was going to be attracted. The Talmud talks about the importance of that aspect of a relationship, but we're not going to talk about that now. The second is, it says, V'ish lo yida'a. When the Torah records that Rivka comes to the well, it says she was beautiful. This is in verse 16. She was beautiful, and she was a betula, a virgin. V'ish lo yida'a, and a man did not know her. Now that language for Rashi seems to be redundant, and he has to come up with an additional interpretation of V'ish lo yida'a about Rivka. But the Netziv does not see it as redundant. He reads it literally. V'ish lo yida'a. Men didn't know her. She wasn't known amongst the male shepherds, the people who were hanging around this area, who were hanging around the well. They didn't know her. Says the Netziv, Shitbonein ba she'ein la davar im anashim. She had no interaction with the men. This servant saw that all the other women there were known to the men; they were acquaintances. They were used to being there every day. They also weren't so modest. This was the first time that she had been out. Alkein lo yida adam. She just wasn't familiar with them. He knew by the fact that she hadn't been out there before, that she had yichus. She had a good. She came from a strong family background. And because of that, her family didn't need to send her out. Perhaps they had servants to do it. Oh, and this is what I want to focus on, mishum tzniut. Or the reason she didn't go out there was because she was modest. She didn't want to make a splash. She didn't want to interact with the other people. She was very comfortable in her own home. She was very comfortable alone. She didn't need to go out and socialize, what seems to have been what's happening around the well. And then the Netziv continues, she fills up her bucket. She also didn't bend down the way all of the other people bent down all the other women bent over to go get the water. So here we see that the Netziv is focusing on her tzniut, on her, first of all, desire to sort of stay in her home, and the fact that she did not need to go out into the public and to socialize with everyone. She was very comfortable in her own setting. And the second point is that she carried herself in a way which was tsanua. She carried herself in a way which was modest. I think that the Netziv is offering us an interpretation which is exactly the opposite interpretation of Rashi. Again, Rashi is saying that what impressed the Eved was the miracle that was done to her, the public miracle that was done to her, that everybody knew that she was righteous. Everybody who saw the water rise up to her knew that she was righteous. The Netziv is saying exactly the opposite. What impressed the Eved was that she was not engaged in any type of public display of how wonderful that she was. Now, I'm not suggesting that she went there, I'm not saying that Rashi says that she went there on purpose to get noticed. I don't believe that's the case at all. What interests me is that in the eyes of Rashi, what was noticeable to the Eved, to the servant, was the flash, was the fancy stuff, if you will. And for the Netziv, what impressed the Eved? For the Netziv, what impressed the Eved was her tzniut, was her modesty, that she was not accustomed to going out there and drawing attention to herself, despite the fact that she was beautiful. Again, maybe that's why the Netziv starts off by saying that she was beautiful. She could have attracted attention to herself. She had the capacity to do that, but she chose not to. And she also chose to carry herself in a way which the Netziv says was modest, which is borne out by the way the verses describe how she went ahead and got the water. So here we have two diametrically opposed versions of what happened there. Was it the miracle, the public miracle that impressed the Eved, and the public nature of Rivka's righteousness that impressed the Eved, or was it the very opposite, the fact that she did not draw attention to herself and that she was a very private person who was very comfortable sort of staying alone and not necessarily going out into the big crowd and not drawing attention to herself? Those are two very different interpretations between Rashi and the Netziv. I'd like to suggest that they also offer us two different ways in terms of ordering our priorities. Uh, often, often we are impressed by flash. Often we're impressed by things which draw attention, which draw our attention to other people. And what draws our attention to other people? The things that we see on the outside, the externals, the things that sometimes are held up as a symbol of someone's status or success. And sometimes we allow those things to be the things that impress us. The Netziv seems to be suggesting, offering us a different model. What should really impress us about people? What should really make us sort of scratch our head and say, that is a special person? And he's suggesting not the person who draws attention to themselves, but rather the person who is tsanua, the person who is modest. And modesty, again, here is not only about the way that one dresses. It's about the way one carries themselves, the way that one engages in a conversation, allowing other people to be the center of attention as opposed to having to put themselves in the center of attention. That is what the Netziv said impressed the Eved. That's what impressed the servant, and that is why he ran to greet her. So we have these two very different models. And again, I want to reiterate that I'm not suggesting that Rivka intended to draw attention to herself, but I think comparing these two approaches to the Pasuk, the approach of Rashi and the approach of the Netziv, challenges us to perhaps ask ourselves what it is about other people and situations that impress us, and what is it in life that we aspire to. How do we want to impress other people? Do we want to impress other people by sort of imposing ourselves and making ourselves the center of attention? Or can we hope that people will see our value in us for who we are and just be comfortable like Rivka was within ourselves without the need to call attention to ourselves? I think that's a very, very beautiful lesson that we get from the Netziv, and a real challenge that he gives us in terms of how we go about viewing the value, if you will, of others, and also, very importantly, how we view ourselves and how we value ourselves, and how we evaluate ourselves. Again, is it based on how much attention we can draw to ourselves, or perhaps how comfortable we could be in our own skin, doing our own thing without the need to be at the center and to make everything really about who we are. It's really about giving room to others and letting others be the center. That is the lesson that the Netziv, that I draw from the Netziv's interpretation of what impressed the Eved in terms of Rivka and why he ran to her. Shabbat Shalom, and please again share your feedback with me about the shiur, and have a wonderful day.